You see, the Ottoman empires never called it intelligence. That's our modern label. What they did was observe. They were very deliberate with that word. To observe was to control. They didn't have agencies. They didn't have uniforms or shiny badges. What they had was a system, like invisible, quiet, layered, like the skin of an onion. And you don't notice what is beneath until you peel. And right at the like a center of that onion sat the Sultan. That's where it all began. The Sultan's eye. And think of Sultan not just as a ruler sitting on a golden throne. Think of him as like a spider in the middle of a massive web. Every like a single thread leads back to him, and the web wasn't made of soldiers or politicians. It was made of information. And inside the palace, every whisper counted. Eunuchs, I guess I pronounced correctly, servants, scribes, concubines, they were more than background characters. They were nodes in a network. And the Sultan never relied on a one channel. He never trusted just one voice. He built parallel streams of intel. So when a provincial, for example, governor reported something the Sultan already knew because someone in the harem had whispered it to a eunuch who passed it to the chief black eunuch who slipped it into the Sultan's ear. That was the genius. If one stream lied, another one would correct it. And the liar wouldn't even know, who wouldn't even know how he had been caught or not. And the chief black that's not some ceremonial title. This man was the real shadow operator inside the palace. He controlled access, controlled letters, controlled information, bloodstream. And if the grand vizier was the face of the empire, the chief black was the pulse. This inner circle operated like an invisible board of directors, and no one called them spies, but that's exactly what they were. Intelligence on the move. And now outside that the palace, the Ottomans didn't separate war from intelligence. The two were the same thing. They're armies moved with eyes wide open. They had these raiding cavalry units called akinci. Most people hear that word and imagine wild horsemen burning villages, but that was just the surface. Their actual function was reconnaissance, fast, quiet, and deep behind enemy lines. They mapped rivers and they counted heads. They noted how fast the enemy responded. They set fires, deliberately, not to destroy, but to measure reaction time. And that's a classic, probing. It's what modern like a special operations units do when they test like the perimeter of the target. And they didn't need, like a satellites or drones. They had like a horse's speed and silence. And behind them came scouts, guys, locals, converts, people who knew the language, the terrain, the like rivers, the moods, like of villages. These guys were not like soldiers in a uniform, and they were dressed like the people they moved through. And sometimes, they were like a merchant, sometimes like a deserters, sometimes just like a shadows, the edge of the road. And here's a move I love: the Ottomans used fake deserters to feed disinformation to their enemies. And that's not modern. That's not like the new agent, modern agencies. That's a tactical older than that's a tactic older than a gunpowder. In other words, you send like someone over pretending to be broken and bitter. They, like in air quotes, reveal what looks like a secret, and the enemy swallows it whole. Psychological warfare at the human level. The Devshirme web, and one of the most powerful pieces of this, entire puzzle came disguised as something else: the Devshirme system. Most people only know it as, like, the forced recruitment of Christian boys who were raised like to become elite janissars or administrators. But from an intelligence perspective, Devshirme was like a network of human sensors, and these boys came from like everywhere, like the Balkans, Anatolia, the Caucasus. They spoke different languages and knew like different cultures, and after years of indoctrination, they owed their loyalty to one person, the Sultan, not like to their birth village, not to their blood, only to him. So when they grew up and like were placed all across the empire, military, bureaucracy, palace, what you actually had was a living, like a breathing surveillance net. And every, that kind of province had its like loyal eyes and ears, and those like eyes didn't blink. Some of them became governors, some like a diplomat, some soldiers, some personal attendants. But like they all carried a single that kind of thread, that led like a straight back to the center of the web, and that's how you build control without calling it control. Spies without badges. You want to know how, like, like the Ottomans gathered intelligence abroad? Yeah, not with like a trench coat and fake passport. They used what every great power uses when it's clever: people who already belong. Merchants were perfect. They could cross borders, trade goods, speak languages, and ask questions without anyone raising suspicion, especially Armenians, Greeks, and Jews. Groups that had like contacts both inside and outside the empire. And these were, like a walking, talking intelligence channels. And diplomats too. For example, official envoy carried not just letters but eyes, and they observed like how people looked, what they whispered, which lords like drank too much, which generals like fought each other behind closed doors. A good diplomat, for example, didn't like bring back souvenirs. He brought back witnesses. And then you had renegades. That's what the Ottomans called foreigners who converted and joined their side. These people were gold. They had access to world's empire, to worlds the empire couldn't easily reach. They knew how to blend in on both sides, so like a middleman. And many European courts were infiltrated this way, not through armies, but through people no one suspected. But my favorite part, pilgrims and Sufi networks. That's the quietest cover of all. Like, nobody questions a pilgrim, nobody checks a prayer. While Europe was fighting over religion, the Ottomans weaponized it. Counterintelligence, the silent watchers, an empire, that stretches across like a continent, doesn't just spy outward. It has to protect itself inward. The Ottomans knew that, and they built their own this kind of like invisible wall around their cities and ports. And foreign diplomats were watched like hawks. Letters were intercepted, caravans were tracked in caravansaries, and like marketplaces were crawling with informers who looked like stable boys or like bakers or clerks. And like when someone, for example, was caught, working for Venice, Austria, or another country, they were not like diplomatic niceties. The Ottomans didn't play like a courtroom games. They made people disappear swiftly, quietly, no ripples. The Janissaries themselves, those like elite soldiers everyone romanticizes, doubled as like internal security. And when rebellions simmered, they knew before anyone else. Sometimes they crushed them before they were even public, and that's the mark like of a system that doesn't just collect information; it controls its flow. If you control the flow, you can control the narrative. So about like a psyops before the gunpowder. Here's what it gets really interesting. The Ottomans understood that you can break an army long before you fire a cannon. You break it with fear, rumors, numbers, stories, and they spread tales of massive, like unstoppable forces marching west. They let whispers leak through trade routes. An army of 30,000 felt like 300,000 by the time the rumor reached Vienna, and religious like messaging amplified it. They, didn't just march as soldiers; they marched as like a God's chosen. And that's like a kind of different of like psychological weapon. And when they reached like that kind of frontiers, they didn't always need to fight. Many like a smaller powers bent the knee before the first sword was drawn. Why? Because the psychological battlefield was already won. And that's modern influence operation. like a centuries before anyone else used that phrase. The power of secrecy. Now here's something subtle but deadly. The Ottomans practiced it, what I would call layered secrecy. When like they planned a military campaign, not even their like a top commanders knew the full objective until they had to. Orders came like in a sealed form, or orders were revealed in a stages. Plans were whispered, not written. Even the man leading the charge might not to know the real target until the day before the strike. And you control like information like that, and you don't just keep your enemies in the dark. You keep your own people predictable. No leaks, no like loose mouths. And during the campaign against Hungary in 1526, the Sultan played everyone. Some of his own viziers believed they were heading into a completely different target. And by the time the truth spread, it was like too late for anyone inside or outside the empire to react. And that's like operational, discipline on like a level most modern organizations only dream about. And you can ask like why it worked, and you have to understand something about the Ottoman mindset. They didn't see intelligence as a tool. They saw it as like a bloodstream of power. And it wasn't like some department tucked in a corner. It was like everywhere, in the palace, in the field, in the marketplace, in the mosque, in the bedchamber. They like a mixed loyalty, fear, religion, and personal ambition into a single engine. It's the reason they could control such vast and diverse territory for like a century without modern technology. And every whisper mattered, like every whisper traveled. And the Sultan sat in this central, patient spider, feeling like every vibration on the web. And if you will ask why it still matters, most people underestimate history. They think the world began when, the internet did, but real intelligence, is ancient. The methods do not change, only the tools. And when I look at the Ottoman system, I don't see dusty old stories. I see living tactics. I see like how power protects itself, how it moves, how it manipulates. And if you like it, you know what you have to do. See you next time.